Teaching is one of the most rewarding and challenging professions in America. With budget cuts, teacher layoffs, and low-performing test scores, it's a wonder why anybody would want to get into the profession. My guest tonight is exceptional. 5-time Teacher of the Year, 2-time Coach of the Year, yet he constantly comes under fire from his kids, his players, and his principal. My guest tonight is Sebastian Caine.
Teaching isn't easy. It's a very hard profession. You have up to 40 kids in the classroom at any one time, learning about material that they have no interest in learning about. And you need to find a way to keep them engaged. You need to find a way to keep them occupied. You need to find a way to keep them under control, especially in this generation of technology and instant gratification where these kids don't have the same attention span that you might be used to. I have to do that while I'm invisible.
Now, how long have you been teaching for?
Let's see, I started in 83, and this is 09. So this would be the start of my 26th year, I believe.
And what subjects have you taught?
During that time, I've pretty much taught everything at the school. They kind of call me the Renaissance man. You know, I can do a lot of things. And right now, however, currently I'm teaching theology to juniors. And it's kind of interesting how we've fallen into this. After doing everything else, this kind of was the subject that clicked. You know,
and why did it click?
Well, you know, I think the dynamic between teaching about God and that it boils down to faith and whether you believe or not, and the evidence of, you know, whether he's real or not, there comes a point where you have to rely on faith.
Get this straight. You're not trying to insinuate that because you're invisible, that somehow you correlate better with God with these children?
No, Nick, that's exactly what I'm saying. I'm saying that because they can't see God and they can't see me, it goes hand in hand in this religion class.
Moving on, I've been told that you're the varsity basketball coach. Now, looking at me, I know you can't really tell, but I used to be quite the athlete back in the day. And
even after people have graduated and have grown up and they're professionals, they still want to hold on to this concept that they were better than they really were.
You know, we could deal with this later. I'd be more than happy to take you outside and school you one-on-one. Back to the question, I know that if I was playing for a coach that was invisible, it'd be pretty hard for me to relate and even follow the direction. How do you motivate and persuade these guys to play for somebody who, let's be honest, they can't see?
Well, see, therein lies the benefit of being invisible. Because if we look at the classroom perspective, where you have that connection with them, as we talked about with theology, and the difficulty of them not being able to see you, while they may not be able to look at me, they can sure hear me when I'm coaching.
Now, how about the opposing team? I got to imagine the other teams at the end of the game when they come to shake the hand of the head coach that they can't see, it's got to be a little bit of intimidating and disrespectful.
Well, it is. And in this climate, we constantly preach sportsmanship and doing the right thing. And it's really hard at the end of the game where the other coach can't see and interact with me, and he's just standing there with his hand out, and he's kind of waiting for me to come, and he doesn't know where I'm coming from. It's almost embarrassing.
Interesting. Well, let me read a quote from one of your players, if you don't mind. This is from Nate. He's one of your point guards, it looks like. It says, "I never know if he's there. I don't know if he sees my hard work or my effort. I feel like I spin my wheels most days, and I go home and cry."
Well, you know, that's why Nate doesn't play, you know, because he's a crybaby. He's more concerned about what I'm doing than what he should be doing. And he hears this booming voice coming out of somewhere, "No, Nate, do it again." And he just totally melts down because he can't see me.
You're putting the blame on the student or the athlete in this case rather than seeing that it could be a little hard for a 17, 18-year-old to relate to somebody who's not there. Speaking of quotes, let me read a quote for you from Michael in your period 4 theology class. He says,
this ought to be interesting.
Well, let me read the quote first. He says, "I try to find Mr. Caine, and most days he's not there. I feel like I struggle constantly to get my questions answered."
And that's typical Michael. You know, he wants to lay the blame on the teacher instead of taking accountability for the fact that he doesn't turn in any work.
So you think there's nothing to this whole invisible role that you have in the classroom that affects the way that these kids might want to get help from you?
Nick, right? It's Nick?
Yes.
Nick, when you were in school, you did your work, you turned it in, you got a grade, you went on with your day.
Yeah, but I know it was very nice to one of my favorite teachers, Mrs. Betty. It was very nice to have Mrs. Betty there to go up to and console me and help me. And I think the students lose that with a person who, I mean, quite frankly, it's like you're not even in the classroom. In fact, let me read this from your principal. This is very telling. Your principal says, I never know when he's here or not here. Mr. Caine could go and come as he pleases. I mean, let's be honest. He's just a voice. Any truth to that?
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the greatest benefits of my being. The principal is, quite frankly, just jealous because he can't come to school naked. He has to invest all this extra money in clothing, while I can walk around and nobody knows.
So you're saying his problem is the fact that you get to walk around naked? Now, that sounds like a deeper problem. In fact, let me read here. It says, if it wasn't for California state law, I'd fire Mr. Caine. But because of all the rules, he's protected.
And therein lies the problem, okay? President Obama just signed a bill. Is there a bill protecting invisible people from discrimination?
Now,
because
this
that's
is
ridiculous.
Are you
I've
trying
been
to compare,
invisible.
Excuse me, sir, Mr. Caine. Are you trying to compare yourself to President Obama now? Because that's what I hear. Are you trying to say that you're as good as our great leader?
No, I'm trying to say that all of the different racial, ethnic groups in our country have protection.
So are you saying
all of the different sexual groups in our country now have protection?
Mr.
When do
Caine,
invisible people get protection?
That's just it. Nobody, sir.
That is
Nobody
something
gets to be taught by an invisible teacher. And I'm trying to find out. You're here telling me what a great opportunity this is. And quite frankly, if my son was in your class, I would be very disturbed that he's being taught by somebody who thinks he's God.
Well, that's your own.
You know what? We need to take a break here. We need to take a break. We had to take a little break before, and let me apologize if I was a little too harsh or insulting. I didn't mean to be that way at all. I understand you're trying the best that you can, especially a person in your situation, being invisible and all. I understand that you've got a lot of things you've got to overcome, and I'm sorry to be another burden that might have been put on you. But I have a question for you. Based on the stats that you were given, that you gave us from before, we went ahead and asked our art department to put together a sketch of what you would look like. And based off your stats where you say you're 6'3", 220 pounds, and have the body of a professional athlete, which is quite telling in itself, does this represent at all what you would look like?
So we've taken to now mocking me through drawings?
No, not at all, sir. I mean, this is a great drawing, in my opinion. My art staff is one of the tops in the nation.
So, you know what? Let me show you how big I am. I've had